Hey everybody, Mac Airt for the Geek Pride cast on this, what day are we on? We're on a Monday. Monday evening. Back and forth. We're on this Monday evening.
Good start, Matt.
Yeah, good start. Oh, I've been away. I just got married, as you can see. Look at it. Marriage band. It's addled. All the alcohol's addled my brain. But yes, so
I'm making notes. It's Monday, right? Okay.
So with me tonight, we have my co-host Peter Ray Allison.
Good evening, everyone.
And our special guest, Paul Rose.
Hello, everybody.
So, Paul, who are you? What do you do? What's your thing?
I'm Paul Rose. I am the games designer at Triskelion Games and the founder of the company, which is good because then I can't get sacked. And who am I? Well, that's who I am, really, I guess.
Okay, so how long have Triskelion Games been going, and what kind of drew of you to make your own games company?
That's a good question. So it's been around for about 3 or 4 years, but I've been in the
set up during
COVID. Sorry.
So you set up during COVID?
Yeah. Actually, it was prompted after the first year of the pandemic, and I was painting for at least 12 years, but possibly more like 15, as Wendigo Studio. And had built up an account with about 13,500 followers on Instagram. That was going really well. And then one day the account was disabled. And I thought, okay, whilst I try and get my account back and my business back, I might take this opportunity to do what a lot of people have been advising me to do and make a go of it with one of my games. So I got a couple of my ideas developed to the point of playtesting and demonstrating those to my prospective business partner and good friend Paul Sykes. And in the discussion, we favoured the Thinning Veil over another one, which may make an appearance later on once it's had a bit more time in the oven. And so we went with the Thinning Veil, and the company was founded between the two of us. We decided to invest as much as we could to give it the best possible start, and went from there, really. But there was a steep learning curve because neither of us had run a games company before in that sense. Paul's been involved in the retail side with Psycho Games for a number of years, but he just kind of purchases in bulk Kickstarters, and used to have like bricks and mortar, and now just does everything online. So he's my business partner, and really, I suppose between him and Paul Manley, who's the other Paul at Triskelion, the three of us, those two guys are really the reason why I went with creating games and going down this path, because they know me really from a gaming club, which I founded 16 years ago. And it was founded around the need in Clacton-on-Sea, where I lived at the time, for a place where mature gamers could get together for an evening's entertainment. And the local gaming store was often inundated with kids, and so it got noisy and screamy and all of that kind of chaos. And so a lot of the more mature gamers were driven away from that they wanted a little bit of peace and quiet and a time away from the kids, right? And I was able to offer that. So I turned my abode at the time into a private gaming club and operated out of there for probably 9 years, I think, maybe eight years. And so I met all of these gamers. And whilst I was running tournaments and trying to get people involved in the hobby, so that probably translates to you as Games Workshop products, and that would be largely correct. We started to sort of spread our wings and look into board games, card games, and all sorts of other stuff that was kind of different people's interests. Give all of it a go, and I tried to sort of, I suppose, engender an interest in it locally and stimulate that, and try to provide a place where people could come and play in a nice, safe, non-judgmental environment where everybody was together. It was a very inclusive environment, very safe for everyone. And I think that we have created lots of lasting friendships from that, right? But from it also, it emerged, people were talking to me all the time. So with your ideas for fixing this or creating this tournament or doing this with Necromunda and this with the 40k tournaments I'd run and things like that, they're really great. Like, you should do something with that, you know? And it's kind of, well, I've always done quite a lot of writing. I've always been interested in writing and storytelling from a very young age. And so I got into Dungeons and Dragons when I was about 10. Mm-hmm. All of these kinds of things were part of my experience and part of what went on with that gaming club. We had, I mean, at one time there was probably in and out of my flat, there was probably about 40 odd people. But we were all very much inoffensive geeks, and it was all done in a good and positive way. So we didn't attract any undue attention from the law. We might have thought there was something nefarious going on. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun. And I think, well, I know, because now living a good 5 or 6 hours drive from there are gamers that have grown up from there, moved on, gone through university, now have their own careers, that come and visit and nostalgically reflect on that period and get involved in play testing ideas, or just hanging out, walking around the local dean and catching up. And they wouldn't be doing that if there wasn't a strong foundation of friendship that came from a simple gaming environment and the hobby. So I owe it I owe gaming really in general sort of a real debt, because it's become a huge, it's been my life, and I've really enjoyed it. I've met some fantastic people along the way as a result, as I'm sure is common to all gamers, because we've all got our stories and we've all got the people we grew up with, and then the I suppose the secondary and the tertiary circles of friends as we go through the phases of life, like the people you meet at university, people you meet professionally, and the ones that you connect with in that sense. And there's probably for everybody a few people that you hung out with at school that you may be still in contact with, or maybe even still game with. And then there's maybe a few people from university, and likewise, And and I think all those friendships, they endure and they're very special. And all those people, most of those people were saying I should do something with the ideas, and I hadn't for a long time. I got very distracted, not necessarily with the things that normally distract people, but creatively I was very distracted with singing in bands for a long time, till my health took a turn and I decided to stop that now, which was in 2016, which coincided with first sort of foray into the industry, writing a short story and doing some painting for Wordforged Games, and Mark Rapson, who was wonderfully supportive at the time, and remain in touch with him. I have a lot of respect for him. There were other people also, but I've received a great deal of encouragement creatively in that sense. Do something with your ideas and get going on it, and it's kind of like, I suppose it's kind of like activism, if you have an idea and you want to get something done and you're not seeing anyone doing it, then do something, do it, and I feel like, it's like that with a lot of things in life. If there's something you really feel like passionate about, then get on it, because time's wasting and it waits for no man, right? So, get it done.
When you set up the company, did you have a job? Like there's a lot of people, myself included, you would love to sort of have, like, me and a load of my gaming friends. Again, we have a mature gaming group who sort of board games and stuff, and like we all talk about it, and it's like, no, we've got jobs and stuff, and there's always that worry of you don't want to can something off and do. Were you doing something else beforehand, or was it just a case of, let's just do this?
Okay, so I was, as I'd mentioned, I'd been singing at that time in a rock band for about a decade, but I'd also been restoring antiquities in Europe. Wow, okay. And I was also part of the sort of the auctions scene. So I worked on a number of military bases and things, and because Americans love to collect antiquities from Europe, so I did that, and I was painting all throughout that period, and I always had a base in England, so I was coming back and singing and juggled all of these things. And whilst that was going along, I always had this in the background and was running this club, and so my time was divided between all of these kinds of things. And I don't have at the time I don't have a wife or children and the usual kinds of things that people have those sort of responsibilities, I suppose, in that sense, beyond and outside of themselves, to things that are greater than themselves. And so I was just finding my own path, and so I didn't have those kind of considerations, and therefore I was free to make the right decision for me. But by the time I did it, I have a very supportive partner who's my Viking from whose name is Trina, and we've been together for a decade now, and she's always encourages me to pursue my dreams, no matter what they are, and my passions, and so we've always found a way. And with the games, it's kind of like we all have hobbies, right? Like everybody has like a thing that they like to do. So if it's like, I don't know, if you're particularly well off, you might really enjoy time on your yacht or your golf, and you go and go on golfing holidays, and you go to your lodge, and you spend your money at the club, and you have all of those kinds of things. And for me, it was like, well, my game is my passion, but I need to look upon it as something that's really, it is an investment, of course it is, but it's also the way that I choose to invest and spend all of the available income I can possibly pour into it in order to make it the best it can be. and the thing then is that if you end up with a product like these, then that's a success in itself. So you have your own sort of yardstick to measure that. You know, whether it's something like, I can show you actually real quick. So part of the process is, right now is this, okay? So it starts out with stuff like this, okay? So these are the card decks for Red Mist, which is my current development, which is a skirmish game. Now, I told you, wow. I told you I started out with the wargaming and things like that. So obviously within that, I had some ideas for a wargaming system that people would listen to me. But you just sit around and you talk and you shoot the breeze with people, right? Yep. And you talk about concepts, and like you were saying, you've got your friends, and we haven't done it. We've got these other things, you know. Yeah. But that's the stuff. It's right. Like life is the thing that's happening, and your dreams are the things that sometimes have been put on hold, or those kind of aspirations certainly fall by the wayside. You know, a lot of the time. For me, those kinds of things are what make life worthwhile for me. Those are the things that fuel me and make my spirit come alive. And I think without that, I know that without that, because I've had periods of time where it's been really, really difficult financially, and I've worked, you know, like a string of jobs at the same time, and I've been in and out of different bands trying to make ends meet any way that I could. And those are hard. Those are really hard times. I know that in those instances, I'm not a happy person. I need to be creating. I need to be doing something. So, I mean, that's probably why I started writing on the Lord of the Rings Plaza back in 2003 or something like that. And really, I was like a games master on there when message boarding was a thing. Oh, yeah. Message board communities were huge, right? And I'd not used it was like my first night on the internet, and I'm like, oh, let's go and see if there's somewhere I can role play in Middle Earth, you know. And there was this terrific forum where you could discuss all aspects of Tolkien's lore, or all aspects of anything geek, really, you know. But it was obviously the dominant focus was on Tolkien, the lore, and the scholars there were some of the foremost scholars in the world. And then they had this little forum that you could go off into, and they were structured for role playing. So I went off to Gondor, and I'm like, I'm going to be a ranger. It's going to be great. And mostly it was. And I had a really good time. And I made lifelong friends there too, because these things, when you share the imagination together, you're going on real journeys, right? It's like, so if you're going to go at something that's very immersive, like Vampire the Masquerade, that being more of a storytelling based system, in fact an entirely storytelling based system. I mean, you can run very many games without rolling a dice, and that when you share that, everybody takes that journey. Everyone's imagining it may be different, but that's not really different to the way that we experience life, because everyone has a different filter. Everyone's mind is the interpreter of a scene, and we'll all see it slightly differently. And I think that journey remains equally valid then. So we go on those kind of imaginative leaps together, don't we? And then we've had those journeys. They're real. As real and as tangible as anything else. So like that time when your back's against the wall in that scrape in that dungeon, or in that sci-fi game where, I don't know, the maybe it's a cyberpunk game and the Yakuza have got you cornered, but you've got to get that you've got to get that chip out, you've got to get that information to your broker as quickly as you can, and it's kind of like, well, how do we get out of here? And you've been shot up really bad, but there's the friend that comes in and saves you and makes that hero roll, and you escape together, and it's kind of like all that stuff's like, wow, and those bonds are as equal as that time when, like, do you remember when I broke down, like I was on the A19, I was stranded there for hours, and you came along and helped me out and you got me home, and it's like those are just as relevant in terms of the way that we build up our friendships. And I feel like this kind of thing grew out of people encouraging me to chase that dream. And this is where it all starts. So it all starts like this. It looks all very nice until you start realizing these aren't actually cards. They're just print ups, and they're just sleeved, and if I need to change anything, I can do it very inexpensively. Yep. And I can play test the hell out of it, right? And then as I'm going, if I chase a wild hare, I've got a new idea. That all happens too. And I'd start with a theme, and often very strong narrative ideas. That's where I'm coming from. It grows from there. And so that's what's happening at the moment. A lot of the time when I'm not doing Cormac, I'm doing Red Mist, because that's the next development for us. So then you've got, I don't know, starts like that. There's a battle arena for Red Mist, and we just laminate that up, we decide, and we start to make this. So obviously you can already see it's a grid-based skirmish game. Those are all of the 4 environments so far are obviously fully compatible if you wanted to use them as battle arenas for, I don't know, a Pathfinder or a Dungeons and Dragons night or something. It's like completely compatible, of course, 25mm grids. And I don't like to leave things late in the day. So you have, this is the full working rule book for this is just the skirmish. Right, this is just the skirmish game. This is the basic rules. There's a campaign system that's going to be added to that, and it's sort of all. So for me, it all grows like that. And if I want to put something into the game, I want the mechanics to be grounded thematically, so they feel sort of logical and realistic extensions of what really they work the way they should work, and in a logical way. And I think that really helps people to get a sort of an organic grasp of it, because they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so there was a guy that at UKG asked me about something like a poison trap, and he was kind of like, oh, so it's giving off a gas, and he's like, if someone goes through there with a lit torch, can it explode? And I'm like, yeah, it actually can. And he was like, wow, you thought of that. And it's kind of like, yeah, not all of them, but there is this one that does that, and so I explained the mechanic to him, and he was like, I can't wait. I was just like, yeah, cool. It's kind of little things like that just get people excited, but they get me excited too when you're playing and you see stuff like that. So I think that was one of my connections to a guy named Rob Butler who did Z-War. Here, such as out of shot, but Z-War, which is just behind me, and out of shot. And in Z-War, there was something that was kind of like the way that the game system worked when you're climbing stairs and transitioning between levels. Was exactly the way that I'd written it on a scenario I'd written for Endure the Stars, and I'd put out on their Facebook forum, on Grimlord Games Facebook forum, and because they were the same, I was kind of like, oh wow, like somebody else thought that was the logical way to do this thing. And so I was talking to Rob about that, and we ended up becoming fast friends too. And his mileage on Star Wars varies to mine, but I'm glad someone's enjoyed it, I guess. It's like, I think it was Rian Johnson that crashed it for me, but I think that the wheels were coming off before then. But
Wow, I have to, man. The enthusiasm and the passion coming from you is infectious. It just makes me feel like I was like, I want to build my own board game. I want to go and do my own thing. Let's quit the job and just do the thing.
Don't do the crazy thing. Don't do the crazy thing. You will regret that. I can guarantee you will regret that. Yeah. But if you can do it and you can forward it, you can just kind of like, the idea is it's like chipping away at a mountain, right? So it's like you're just tapping away. It's actually a terrible book series, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But in Faith of the Fallen, you've got Richard Cypher as a character from Terry Goodkind, and he's and it's the novel in that series that talks about the nobility of the human spirit. But a lot of people think that it's there to, and it is. There are strong foundations in Ayn Rand's psychology and philosophy, right? Which divides the room, which is fine. I think in a way that was the intent, but the idea there was the creation of this thing out of nothing, out of a block of stone. He's going to make this thing of beauty, and it's going to take him a very, very long time whilst he's effectively a slave in an empire that I can't remember the name of the empire. I do remember that the bad guy had a propensity for licking his fingers. I was like, why is he licking his fingers again? It's kind of like there's a character in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, Nineve, I think that's Nineve, and she's always tugging on her braid, right? And it's like, why is she still tugging on her braid? It's just, there it is, she tugs on her braid. And then when Brandon Sanderson took over that series, I'm not going off on a tangent, man, but she ends up cutting her hair and she pulls the braid out. Okay. That's hilarious. As long as you read it enough to go, I'm not writing that description ever again. And yeah. But I would encourage you 100%, man, to just chip away at that mountain, like Richard Cypher making his statue, because if you do a little bit every day, it will get there, Yeah,
I've always had this like we had a sort of like a brief moment where there was a couple of us, and there was one of the more organized, and he had a lot of little small games, and we actually did like you said, like just like pieces of paper and stuff, and we did some play, and just seeing people play test things even on pieces of paper. Like there's a guy who does stuff for us now and again called Bevan Clatworthy. His company is called Tinkerbot Games, and like I see his Facebook stuff and his Instagram things, and it's all like, just like this table with pieces of card with drawings all over it, and like things like that, and it just makes me feel good, seeing people do that, actually following their dreams, doing that thing, making something. I like it's that for me. I have this sort of this grand concept for things and ideas, but putting it into practice and doing that thing, I just can't do it. I can't get myself to that point, and so I've got a lot of respect for people who just go, I'm going to do the thing, and basically live their dream. So seeing how passionate you are about it, and seeing like Bevan and other friends who do these sort of things, it's amazing. Like I've got so much respect for people who just do it.
Like that. Yeah, when somebody says something like that, it is lovely. If you'd seen me in my days when I was in my band, you would have seen passion, my friend.
What was the band? What was the band called, by the way?
We were so I was in a number of bands. So I was in a band called Anywhen. I was in a band called Mother Pearl. I was in a band called Half Ton Man. I was in a band called Stick of Rock. Stick of Rock was the one that was, for me, the most fun, the most challenging. It was insane. So it started out with like a sort of in the late 90s. Probably late 90s, and I was doing like a sort of an indie pop thing, and I sounded very Americana, Michael Stipe sort of voice. Didn't quite have that. I hadn't quite grown into my own, and it's really weird listening to an old recording. But so I went from there, and I ended up going through, like, I was like, what can I try now? I'm going to do like a folk and acoustic duo, and we never really had a name. It was just me and my friend Martin went out, and we played a few gigs, and we got this entertainment guy. We got him like a contract at UEA, and then Martin was like, oh, there weren't very many people there, and I just I'm not sure if I want to do this. And I was like, oh no, at that point we'd written like 30 songs, and I was like, if he walks, that's 30 songs we haven't got recorded that I can't. And they're gone, right? They're gone. And so that happened. Well, we stayed fast friends, but I got it. Like, I understand. And he got very, like, a lot of anxiety and things, you know. And so I always encouraged him, and it was disappointing to me. Of course it was. But if he was not comfortable, I would, you know, prefer him to be comfortable and not feel like he felt like obligated to do something because of our friendship. And then I ended up in this, like, I went from folk to like a blues and rock and a band that then explored some punk when they got a younger drummer. And it was like that Blink 182 era and all of that kind of stuff coming through. And I'm like, man, that's not me, but I could do it. And it was cool. It was like, we're going to do some of that. And then we're going to do some Doors numbers. It must have been the weirdest thing to go and see. You know, you're like, who are these guys? What era are they? But then I ended up in Stick of Rock, which I was with Stick of Rock for probably the longest time in that, which was probably about a decade or so, different incarnations of the band. And I remember I was auditioning for a completely different band, and a drum, and he liked my voice, what he could hear of it. And he goes, but what I really liked was how you just threw yourself around and were just really into it. He's like, I could feel the passion. And I was kind of like, okay. And we had this conversation because he lost my number, which he tried to get off the guy who formed this band. He's like, well, who is that singer? What's his? I want to talk about what we could do in the future. And what he was actually trying to do was put me into another band which became Stick of Rock. And so I ended up with a group of probably I would say the best musicians that I've worked with, and it was chaos, but it was fantastic. We didn't have enough time to hone everything as professionally as we would have liked, but we really. Yeah, I'll share with you some recordings.
Oh, that'd be awesome! Yeah, we got
Paul
on YouTube says it was always a great performance with Stick of Rock. His AC/DC covers were spot on.
That was like I can tell you the story about that. Was that it's not like one of those great anecdotes or anything, but I was going in for a sandwich at a local store and bumped into this guy, and he's like, "You're the guy." I was like, what? He goes, you're the guy, you're the singer. And I was like, oh, you see me in like Half Ton Man or something. I'm like, and I couldn't place him. And he's like, no, like 2 months ago we were in this thing and there was these rushed auditions and you were the singer and you did like, I can't remember what it was. It's like it was a Who song or something. It was a Who song. Damn, can't remember. Can't explain. And he goes, you can't explain. And he goes, and I was the drummer. And I was like, cool. He was like, we talked. He was a really good, energetic guy, but this time he made sure he got my number. But he said, and I kind of regret, because the next day he called me up and he goes, right, tonight. No, he said tomorrow night. It's going to be what was it? It was 2 AC/DC songs and two Aussie songs. And I'm like, I know that I've got like a certain, at the time particularly, a certain look and like. So you're going to start to draw some, but that's not what I was listening to. So I was like, okay, I can do this. And like my old man, he was into AC/DC, right? He loved AC/DC, but by the time that I was listening to music and really taking any notice of it, he'd kind of gone through that and it's into his cool down, chill, I'm going to listen to Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks vibe, right? And it's kind of like, oh, all right then, you know. And then there's like, I would go through his old vinyl and it'd be like, Crocus, who are they, you know? And so I was kind of like, I was listening to that kind of stuff, but I had not tried to sing anything like that. And I remember that my dad hearing me sing growing up would be like, shut up, you sound like a Yank. And he would be like, sorry, I'm not trying to harm you. You know, I just quite like singing. And then to actually think, well, I've never tried to sing along to an AC/DC track since that sort of experience. And now I've got to go and do it tomorrow night. And I got like halfway through Back in Black and started to lose the rhythm of the lyrics because I couldn't remember it in my head. So like the phrasing, and but I was nervous as hell. So I went outside. I was smoking at the time. I've been 10 years quit, but I was smoking at the time. So I went outside for a cigarette, And I was like, they've got to think I'm such a joker. And it was really loud in the studio, so I couldn't really hear much of myself singing, and like a little bit, and enough to know the pitch, but it was tricky. And they rushed out. Like I'd barely got my cigarette lit, and they were like, "Be our singer, be our singer." And the guitarist, who apparently is like I did not know at the time, but he is a huge AC/DC fan. That was his thing. He was just like, wow. He's like, with you, can you do this? Can you do that? And he just was like, with your voice, we can do all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, like in short bursts, but like, come on. We ended up with a set that was increasingly packed with all that sort of stuff, like Iron Maiden, DC, Ozzy. There was some Disturbed tracks. Wow. There was all this kind of stuff that was like Guns N' Roses. All this stuff that's like, okay, there was some Whitesnake stuff early in this. Whoa. And it's like, you can do Coverdale. And I'm kind of like, I barely warmed up, you turn, and it's like, okay, I used to drink and I'd be like hammered during a gig. And then with Stick of Rock, I could not drink because it constricts the vocal cords. Yeah. So I'm kind of like, right, I can't drink. I really should not smoke because all of these things affect your voice and your vocal clarity. And it was a real challenge. It was a real workout, and I loved every minute of it. And I would do that again. But it's kind of like, that was the passion, man. Right? The immediacy of that is huge. It's actually, I didn't realize, but when we did UKGE, the energy is actually very, very similar when you get a group of people that sit down and play your game. And within a couple of rounds of the game, if not almost instantly, it feels like you have just integrated into a gaming group. And all the guys, all the characters, right? And it's kind of like, there's a like for like trait wise. It's almost like the Joss Whedon school of writing, right? So you're like, oh, this is like a psyche that's divided up around a room full of people. And for this social interaction, everyone's playing their part, right? We're all more well-rounded than that, but that's what's going on. And to have that, and to have a really good time and make these people laugh and entertain them for the hour or so that the demonstrations was phenomenal. And I was like, oh, this is really good, really engaging, really great fun. And I was running all the demonstrations at UKG with my friend Paul Manley. And we both had such a great time with just the feel-good factor with everybody that came in and played Cormac with us was amazing, absolutely through the roof, really great fun. And it had that same interaction that I love, and that was one of the things that was different, like differentiates singing from acting. Okay, it's huge because you have that. It's a real difference when you got something that's like it's trained into you. You know exactly where you got to stand. You're reading, you're saying someone else's lines. You're delivering them in the way that someone else has told you to deliver them, and that's acting. And then you replicate, which kills it. But then music, it's like the dynamism of music, the immediacy of music, the energy of music. Doesn't matter what music you're into. It's all about the passion and the energy that comes from that. And we all share that. And it fills a room. And when you come out of it, that's when you walk away from the best concerts or the best gigs you've been to, and you're walking on air. Yeah. Your ears might be ringing, but you're walking on air, and for a few days you've got that energy in you, and you're still buzzing from it, and you're like, we got to go see that band again. Where are they playing next, and all that kind of stuff. That all comes from that energy, and sometimes it just doesn't dissipate. For like, I went to a Counting Crows gig at Wembley Arena when I was a kid, and it was like they were a bit outside of my wheelhouse, but they were like a real favorite because every track to me was like gold. And coming out from there, I don't think I was walking on air for like a week, and I'm like, I want to do that kind of stuff. I want to give people nights like that they can come away from and just go, that was such a great night. Yeah. And whatever their stories are, they're attached to that. I had loads of them. I'm sure you guys did, and I'm sure that you still do. And that's the thing that's the driving force of it all. And when that was over because of a physical condition and the slight abuse that I put my body through, it's nothing to do with that.
I feel you. I feel you. I I was in the bar. Technically, so we haven't played any ages and stuff, but it was a big part of my life, my band's life for a long time, and the best gigs we played, and it wasn't even the busy ones, it was the ones where you just had people who got it, or you just sort of like, that guy who came up to you and was completely buzzing off the whole thing and talking to you about it, and sort of, or that person who sort of like followed you to different gigs and things, and it just, and it wasn't like just because you're like, oh, you like, it was just because you felt like your music meant something to somebody, and you had that sort of thing. So it obviously is twofold for you, because you've got your music and your games and stuff. So I understand you've got that, you created that thing and you've given that gift to somebody else who appreciates it. And I can see, like, we've had gigs and stuff, or we've done stuff for Geek Pride where people have talked to us and things, and afterwards you're just like, wow, that was awesome, because we've given something to somebody else. And I can see how addictive that can be.
It's hugely so. It's hugely so, and it makes you feel like you've done something worthwhile. I mean, there are a lot of other pursuits that do as well. I'm just talking about from that energy perspective. Yeah. That's unmatched, right? For me. But with the board gaming, there's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of puzzle solving involved in working out your game mechanics and satisfying yourself with those. If you care about game balance, which I think that, your mileage may vary, but for me it's important. And I think that was massive. Because of for me it probably came from conversations with my dad actually about Dungeons and Dragons, which he wasn't particularly into, but he kind of fell into getting into it around because I got into it as much as I did. But he did. There were a lot of things we didn't connect on, but he'd read Tolkien, and so he passed like a copy of The Hobbit to me, and it's the story everybody tells, and it's like, well, everyone read The Hobbit when they were 6 or 7, and then everyone reads Lord of the Rings when they're like 9 or 10, or a little bit later if they're sometimes a little bit later, but. And it's kind of, well, that happened to me. And then you go, right, okay, so how many other people of like my generation got into Hero Quest in like 1989 through to 1991? And they remember that Christmas or that birthday or whatever, when they opened up that box of goodness and they got hit with that plastic smell and those printed manuals. And it's like, woo, and there's this there's these box of toys, but they're not really toys, but they are toys, but they're not toys. And then it's like, socially acceptable toys that I can have for the rest of my life. Cool. And so you have that kind of thing. And it's like, all right, Star Wars figures are going away. He-Man figures are going away. Transformers, yesterday's news, right? Wow. So all the Generation 1 Transformers are like going away, and your dad's going, put them in a box, they'll be worth a load in time. And it's like, yeah, they're not going in a box, and they're battered, Dad. But like, so all of that kind of stuff was like very much part of my childhood, and that at its best, in its best moments. And sometimes I think that there's that. Did you read that nostalgia article from a few years back about why people in their 40s and 50s and as into collecting games and getting into Kickstarters and crowdfunding, as they are, and how we end up becoming the collectors, and that buying a piece of your own childhood and that nostalgia element.
It's funny you say that, because right, I as you can see, I have zero self-control, but I've gone through because of the ADHD thing. I'm trying my best not to be so addicted to Kickstarters and stuff. But I'll buy a game and then it'll just get I'll because it's got pretty things, and then I'll not play it. It'll get sold, and I'm trying to get rid of stuff and only keep games that I'm going to play, but there are specific caveats I have to my only keeping games that I play, and that is to all the old school games that I played when I was a kid. So I have second all the way up to 4th edition Talisman, sort of old school Talisman. I've got Hero Quest, obviously the first edition to Hero Quest, Space Crusade, old school Epic, so obviously Advanced Space Crusade, old Blood Bowl from 2nd edition all the way up to the current edition, so the polystyrene boards and things. So all the old school games. Space Hulk, I've got all the Space Hulk collection, stuff that I used to play as a kid. and I won't get rid of it. Like, have you ever played a game called Shogun? Like, it was an old sort of like Japanese sort of like area control.
I haven't played Shogun, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah. So I found that we used to play that as kids. Like, I don't think we fully understood it, but it's basically, I think it's like the precursor to the Total War Shogun game. But basically, it's like Risk, but it's a Japanese Civil War sort of game. But I got that because I was just like, my God, I remember sitting at my friend's table playing this game, and I don't even know if I'll play it again, but it's just like that nostalgia. I just had to have it because it's the thing that I had from my childhood. So it ties in exactly what you're saying. I'm not sure if I'll play it again. I'll definitely never get rid of it because it was a part of my childhood.
Yeah, you actually mentioned one that was a big part of my experience growing up, which was, I didn't have a copy of it, but my friend at school who we used to have to find safe areas of the school to try to role play or explore our hobby, and then we would get all the time away from school. It was like everything else didn't matter. This is the thing. And he had gotten Space Crusade, right?
Man. Yep.
And we did play a lot of Space Crusade, but it wasn't long before he said to me, could we take we had a game called PD, right? Which is like, we were kids and that maybe shouldn't have seen it, but back then no one really gave any consideration to certifications in movies. So we watched like RoboCop at a time when that was scarring.
Exactly.
And which is another conversation. I mean, I could talk movies all the time. So very, acting was also a passion of mine, but I discovered that it wasn't really for me. Like the stage work was not for me. There was a lot about the experience that I disliked, but I thought for a while that's the direction I wanted to go in life. And it was probably the only thing where I only had backing from my dad. My mum was always behind anything that she was like, yeah, go and do whatever it is you want to do.
Mums are like that.
Yeah, but my dad was kind of like, oh, don't be in a band. I was in a band. It doesn't go anywhere, and all that. And then he would be like, you can't sing. It's like, all right, cheers. And but he was always like, oh, you should do something with your acting though. You've got something there. And it would be like, all right, cheers, Dad. But so my friend Sid, who owned Space Crusade, we're playing Space Crusade, and he's gone, Police Department was based on our urge to play a game that was like Lethal Weapon, but the only place we could get any gaming material in Clacton was a place called Grenadier Models that was run by a guy named John Ransom. And it was just opposite Century Cinema in Clacton. And he was a fantastic guy. He actually knew an awful lot more about Scalextric than he knew about Dungeons and Dragons. But I did not know that because I was like 10. And I just thought John was God and he knew everything. So if he's got the stock there, he has to have played it and knows everything about it and be into it, right? Because that's his shop. And it's like, no, John's just got these lines and he doesn't really know much about them. But I was unaware of that until I was about 14. And by then, John and I, we talk, and I'd spent all my pocket money there for a long time. And so there was no ability to just go, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy that, I'm just going to do this thing. That didn't happen. So it was create your own entertainment. So we made this thing called Police Department. Like, can you do something with Space Crusade like that, but with aliens? Because it's almost aliens, isn't it? So Sid's like, it's almost there, but it's not there. And I'm like, I think I can do something. So I designed a game that was basically, we can take these components and we can play aliens, but we can use all the different elements from Space Crusade and create something that's almost Dungeons and Dragons light as a board game experience. And it's kind of weird that like 25 years later, that kind of stuff's now what I'm doing. But I mean, Sid's no longer with us, unfortunately. He passed away January before last, and we played so many games. He was like he was like my wingman, right? For the first, I would say, not just my formative years, but right the way through to probably early 20s, where we had a partner of the ways. It wasn't due to a falling out. It was just a difference in where we were going in life, directions in life, and I saw him as his health was on the decline. Just before I moved to Peterlee in County Durham, and I didn't know that I was like, he's in a bad way, but I still didn't entertain the thought that he might be dead within a couple of years. But I would certainly, there's some stuff that we worked on together, not that specifically, but that grew from that into into a role-playing game that I would quite like now to adapt into a board game and take some of the characters he created, because Sid was a rock star, right? He loved his he loved his muscle cars and sort of American rock music. He was more into the sort of that sort of stuff. That like, if I heard Guns N' Roses, it was because of Sid, right? And stuff like that. That wasn't my thing. And although obviously once you're exposed to it, it's like a light switch has just been flicked on. So you're like, whoa, you know, what's this? Because like for a while they were just the best band in the world, if you like your rock. And when you had like Pete Axel with his vocals was just electrifying. But so Sid was this very sort of powerful, funny character. He was like 5'0", and he had all these sort of scars that he was he'd had an accident with this with a kettle when he was a kid, and he got like boiling water down him, which melted away. So he was like Scaramanga, right, from the Bond movies. So it's got like one nipple, and he so PE was horrible for him. He would be like that, and so I'd be like, whoa, what's going on, you know? And that's kind of how, that wasn't exactly how we bonded, but it was like when people would pick on him, sometimes I would take the flack for him. I'll put myself in harm's way so that he didn't take the kicking. And sometimes we both got clobbered. That was just how it was. But and it was rough, but we were very much like, and I miss him so much, and it's like I would love to be able to share where I'm at with like Cormac and stuff with him or with my dad. It's a real shame that that's not part of the life experience. But
it's funny you should say that.
But it would have been wonderful, you know.
There's always that one person who had that big impact on your gaming life. For myself, there's a fella called John Lawson. Me and my brother were good friends with the Lawsons, David and John. And the older brother John he was the guy with the copy of Space Crusade. We never owned it. We had Advanced Space Crusade after playing Space Crusade.
Advanced Space Crusade.
We had it, and so we would go to theirs. We'd play Hero Quest. We'd play Space Crusade. We'd play Talisman. All the games that I love now. All the games I've are all started because John would play them with us, show us how to play, and we're starting to play these games 6-7 years old, and onwards, and it was, like all these games, and it was funny because he would make games for us. He would use components from these games and create new games for us to play. And I got really fond memories of really enjoying. Like, it's a really silly one. There was like we're kids, so we're really into our wrestling at the time, and he made a wrestling game for us. And I there's games out now that tie into how those mechanics, but this was like early 80s, games, and he'd made
early 80s.
Yeah,
wow.
Early 80s, so I'm 43 tomorrow, but so this is early 80s. We were he'd made this sort of wrestling game for us, and I remember how the power bars worked and how, if you went out of the ring you did this and all these different things. And he made cards and everything for it, and he used models from different games and stuff so we could do this stuff. And it just got very fond memories of, and different types of games and different things, and he had a massive influence. Now unfortunately he died recently, and it's a massive, because we lost touch, we hadn't spoken, and then his brother found out from his brother he died, and it was just like, man, that guy had he doesn't, I never got to tell him. It makes me feel slightly emotional now, but I never got to tell him like what a big sort of impact he had on my nerdy life. Every big game that I ever played and basically moved me forwards was down to him. And it's always got that one person who sort of kind of is the sort of the guiding force in your nerdy life. So when you're talking about your friend Sid, it just sort of kind of reminded me of him.
Yeah, I think that he probably knows. You might not have been able to tell him, but he probably knows. I just think that sometimes when you've lit the touch paper with someone, you do know. You can see it. So he'll have been aware that it was a special thing. I'm sure, but it's very difficult when you have that absence. There's a play that that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, and it's like death is the endless time of never coming back, and it's kind of there's a string of things that death is, and in that play Tom Stoppard encapsulates it very well. The constant presence of a void in your life that you can't fill. So like for me, it's sort of began with my parents, and then recently as ended with Sid. But then there's big figures that like you never even meet that influence your life. So like for me, musically, be like someone like Tom Petty. When Tom Petty died, it was like wow, that was like 2017. So you had like 2017, he died, and Chris Cornell, who's like for me probably the most powerful rock singer of like I say my generation, but really he's he was 10 years older than me, maybe a little bit more. But he was always someone that was like both inspirational and aspirational. It's like wow, the things that he could do and make appear effortless, and the difficulties that he was able to reconcile and with his music and soothe. Which I think a lot of people that don't necessarily listen to some of the earlier Soundgarden stuff and things, or are dismissive of that kind of music, don't understand is that we're all soothing and we're all sort of medicating with that music, because we can feel that stuff. We're having that experience, right? So it's like all those songs help you get through in the way that I don't know. I guess if you're looking at sort of, I mean, all of that's mainstream to me, but something like Everybody Hurts is like. Because it is, isn't it? It's not like you're listening to a band called Dog Vomit that no one's ever heard of, that plays like as a garage band that's going to do this. Like, it's like that. They're huge, right? They're huge acts. But like, Everybody Hurts or something by REM. Like everybody who's like had a broken heart could like listen to that song. It's the same when you listen to something like Fell on Black Days, and you've been there, and when someone is able to encapsulate the difficulty of that, the struggle of that. And the sort of there's some self-loathing that comes in that, but there's also some hope that you can conquer it. And I think that Chris Cornell's lyrics and some of the best songwriters can lace that hope through even the darkest of narratives. And we would all be paying attention to the lyrics, and the music. And so that's when those kind of artists I've really attached to. So I find it sort of difficult to hear somebody like Jamie Lawson say like he was looking for an end to one of his pop songs, and it was like someone said, oh, what if the woman that you fall in love with dies of cancer, so you get this sucker punch ending? And it's like, oh yeah, I can do that. And it's kind of like, oh, so it's just a story that you told and it's completely fictional, right? But before it was maybe about someone. And I always felt as an artist that there should be some integrity. And it was actually a big thing for me to suddenly discover that actually there's people that just go, I'm just going to tell it like I've just made up like a story that doesn't mean anything to me. It's just how can I impact you the most so that it resonates with you in some way that makes you listen to it again or buy my record. And I'm like, wow, there's people that do that. It just felt like, there was a huge thing for me. And it really should, because I was like, when was that album out? I don't know when that record came out. I was probably 35 when it.
I mean, I've got a theory about the Thunderman Criminals. I mean, they write songs and play songs about New York. They're very much a New York band. But it's a New York. It's a fictional New York that we've all seen in films and television.
Right.
It has very limited, it's inspired by events like Swashbuckling in Brooklyn is all about the vigilantism in New York during the 90s. But the way they produce it and they sing it, it's so relatable because, oh, I recognize that New York. It's from that film I watched. And the way they kind of did that, I thought was just so well done because it added that connection that you were talking about. But the place they were singing from was one that did not exist, but one we all knew. And I find that really.
I remember that they would give you an access to their world through the familiar, and the familiar would be popular culture movies. It would be often movies that had cult followings, and I think that Huey was particularly honest about that and the direction they would take with that. But it was all done with a very sort of self-deprecating, honest and open humor. And I think that's what really carried that band. They were fantastic live, by the way, as well. So
I've seen them many times. The first gig I ever went to, actually, one of the first gigs was the Fun and Criminals at Doncaster Dome in South Yorkshire in 1999.
Wow.
Yeah, I completely staggered out of there. My knees were killing me, my legs were killing me. I was exhausted, I was boiling, I was dehydrated, and I couldn't be happier.
I don't think Pete. Right. Like if you look at Pete, you would see Pete sort of like rocking up with his cane and his red sort of corset and stuff on. You'd probably think this guy's not a fun-loving criminals fan. He doesn't.
No, they are. I mean, Kate and I got married to. We've got the cover of "We've Got All the Time in the World."
Right.
Because it's just such a great song, and one of the highlights for me, we've talked about 10 years ago now, was when Kay and I got to see the Funland Criminals game. I played live when they played "Come Find Yourself," their album, all the way through, and we got to hear "We Got All the Time in the World," and and played live. I mean, like, he was an old buddy of mine. I've interviewed him several times, and he's just such a lovely guy. I mean,
he seems like a really genuine guy. That's fantastic that you've got to meet him. He seems like a really nice fella.
Didn't he walk off and Nevermind the Buzzcocks or something?
Yeah. He'd been on Nevermind the Buzzcocks several times. He's been a guest a couple of times, and then he was one of the presenters. Sorry. And then about 10 years ago, it was when Rizzle Kicks were presenting it. Basically, he just got angry with them and stormed off.
Yeah. What did he get angry about? What
I just remember he smashed his cup or something, didn't they?
He smashed it. Basically, one of the sticks of Nevermind the Buzzcocks is that they present during the lyrics round at the end, they give them lyrics from their own the singers' own tracks, but he was just getting really wound up by it. Now, I've heard from the grapevine that there were a lot of takes having to be redone. They kept having redone, and they kept having to do the same thing again and again and again.
Hard enough.
That would frustrate someone. Huey, it's fair to say, has a short temper. He's very laid back, but when something kicks off, he doesn't hold back.
The thing that occurred to me about him, not to cut you off, Pete, sorry, but that Huey is very sharp. Like, he's very quick. So if he felt that they were trying to catch him in a gotcha by not recognizing his own lyrics, perhaps that is what triggered him.
Maybe.
Yeah, it could be. I think he just become a dad as well. So the only number of factors there. The truth is, we'll never know because it happened so like 10 years ago. It's not really talked about it, but there's only number of factors. But like I say, I've met Huey. I mean, he has got time for me. I interviewed him when he was just starting out as a journalist, and we got on. I mean, he was just a nice chap. I mean, if you're putting the effort in and being friendly and polite and gentlemanly, he's got time for you. If you're mucking around, if you're wasting his time, then he doesn't want anything to do with it. I mean, like one time, like
not the kind to suffer fools is, I think,
exactly
what I was going to say. Like, he is good humoured, but like, that's what I've seen. I don't know the guy personally. I'm just familiar with the band, and so I can relate. I know what you're talking about. I mean, I remember that Scooby Snacks was probably their biggest hit over here.
Right, yeah.
That they did a song called Up on the Hill, which was probably one of my favourite ones.
Beautiful
it was
track.
Around about the time when I was growing out of stuff like Cypress Hill, I identified with this as sort of something that was a bit more chill, and I really enjoyed that. And then the one that I really loved was I can't really do it, but it was like the Barry White saved my life.
Love Unlimited.
If Barry White saved your life, we got you back with your ex-wife. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. And it's like, so from there I was on board with it, because I was like, that's cool, that's fun. And seeing them live, well, I haven't seen them live for just 20 years. Maybe I saw them at Brighton, actually. Did I see them at Brighton?
He actually lives in Brighton now, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I saw him. Did you really? I saw him in Brighton. That I don't remember when that was, but I saw him. The best time I saw him was at Glastonbury.
Yeah.
and it was intensely hot, and they were probably playing to, I don't even know how many thousands of people. It was well in excess. I would say it was like 100,000+ people, because it was insane. I've been in big crowds. That was the biggest crowd I've been in. And you could see the sort of like the Doppler effect of the sound as you're stood in it. You're just watching everyone pogoing, and it's going right the way. But they sort of interspersed with their songs with scenes from Scarface. I was going to say Pulp Fiction, and I know they did Pulp Fiction, but I don't think they did it that day. But they did Scarface, and it was hilarious. And I was just kind of, this is really great. Like this is like, okay, we're going to do some stand-up stuff between the band and have fun with everybody, and then we're going to play some great music too. And that was just there probably wasn't another band that incorporated that or that did that in that way, and very relaxed. They made it seem natural. It wasn't forced at all, and it was very, very funny. So yeah, I thought they were a good band actually, and very talented.
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the bands that, when playing live, were even better. They were bands that, really play best when they're live. And I used to say, like, the bit in between the songs, when just having fun, engaging with the audience, and just, they're one of the band that kind of really appreciate, when the audience are kind of appreciate them, they're playing that much more. They're giving that much more. And they're just having fun. And you can see the fact that they really do enjoy that kind of live element and just having fun. I mean, because they grew out to like 3 friends living together. And it kind of grew from there. Now, drummers got replaced and then replaced again. And sadly, now Hughes left the band. And so it's now just one of the original guys plus another 2 from Leicester. So it's kind of a sort of a sad ending for the way it's ended. But so it goes.
Yeah, I guess. I guess there's I guess there are some bands where people are kind of like, just wish they would stop. There's other artists where you're just like, I wish they could go on forever, but sadly, it's not.
Well, I've always said, like, my band, as much as we haven't done anything in a while, I've always said, like, I'm never going to do, because I've only been in one band my entire life. It's the band I've been in since 2000, and it's going to keep on. As far as I'm sort of concerned, it's forever. And if I had a son who could play guitar, and like, right, you're going to be guitar, you're going to carry on the name, and it's just going to go on forever. There's going to be no end to this band.
But you have got a daughter now. So
Yeah, that's true. I could say like, me, son. There you go. You're gonna do that. But yeah.
So she can be like the Wolfgang to your Van Halen.
Yeah.
Right?
I wish. Man. I was an all right songwriter and an all right guitarist. My lead guitarist was Eddie Van Halen, reincarnated. He fucking like immensely like good. Like he'd just come in and just started whittling away, and you'd just be like, that's mind-blowingly good, and you'd just be like, I'd feel so inferior when I was like, okay. I'd always say like, I think I'm a better songwriter, but he just like, as a guitarist, technically, wow, amazing, absolutely amazing. Right. Anyway, I think we'll move on to Cormac.
Yeah.
The actual board game that we were meant to be talking about. So can you explain a bit more about the board game?
Well, yeah, Cormac Mac Airt on the Other Side of Midnight is a solo adventure game, but during the campaign we unlocked the possibility to play Gronya, his daughter, so you can play as either Cormac or as Gronya, or the two together, and the narrative changes depending on your choice there. And you'll play through tutorial scenarios as young Cormac, which is kind of like a young Indiana Jones or a young Conan style sequence of adventures, which I thought would be fun, instead of like your standard, this is a really short tutorial that's going to get you used to some very sort of rudimentary things in the game and is almost a pointless play, right? That happens a lot in games. And I was like, I don't want that. I want it to be like that you can learn the different elements of what you're going to be going through afterwards in as short a time as possible, but while you're having fun playing actual scenarios that have got a lot of replay value. So that's what young Cormac was about. And then you have the story where they go on the other side of midnight, and that's where Cormac is approached by a fey creature from the other side of midnight, which is the fairy realm. And she's like an old flame. And she's in dire need of help. and only Cormac can save her. But Cormac is like a little bit. I'm not sure if there's probably more to this than meets the eye. I'm not sure if she's on the up and up, but if she is, I can't ignore it, because the connotations will be drastic, and it will affect both the other side of Midnight and the Land of the Quick, which is the mortal realm, or Innisfail, and that is my fantasy version of Ireland, and it's an old term for Ireland, as much as Iron Innisfail's Land of Stone, and I think it actually comes from Scottish Gaelic, and then was later appropriated when the stories were recorded by Christian monks. I could be off base, but that seems to be the case, that the historians will always have areas of contention, and that would certainly be one of them. But anyway. The
Irish invaded Scotland first, just so you know. Scotland means land of the Irish.
Yeah.
we invaded them, then they came back and plantations and stuff, so it's just like...
All right. I'm just going to rewrite a bit. So Cormac goes across to, of course he does, he goes across to the other side of Midnight, and he knows he's got responsibilities now. He's king of Tara, and he has his children, and he has his wife, and he has his responsibilities, and he's now High King. So and I don't mean he's walking everywhere. So he's now he's gone over to he's gone over to the other side of Midnight to help Beren, who is this fey creature, and then he does actually find that things are not quite as was advertised. The brochure does have some details omitted, and so as he goes through, he eventually meets up with a character called Calcian, and the two come to blows. And he doesn't know who Calcian is, but Calcian knows who Cormac is, because Cormac is like the bane of Calcian's life. But that's part of the story that then gets explored in the expansion of Reaver's Tale, where you get to play as Calcian, who is an Aishi. So Aishi are sort of elves, if you like. They're kind of like Tolkien elves. For people who are perhaps a little bit unfamiliar, I would, it's fairly clear that Tolkien's elves were based on the Sidhe, and probably also other characters of note, like Elric of Melniboné. So if you're a Michael Moorcock fan, those kinds of things are extremely influenced by Irish mythology and legend. And anyway, so we're all sort of like just drinking from the same well, drawing from the same well, probably. But you know what I'm saying.
Well, he took a lot of his inspiration from like Beowulf and all the dragons.
Tolkien specifically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It wasn't purely this. There was obviously there's obviously all aspects of myth. There wasn't really much that Tolkien wasn't inspired by, or that he didn't draw from. There are elements in all different myths that are incorporated into Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion, of course. But digression. Yes. So Cormac's gone over there. He's going to help her out, and then he discovers things aren't quite as billed. However, there is a corruptive force at work in the other side of Midnight that is infusing things with a dark will that is other than their own. And the source of this is obviously the threat that you have to face down on the other side of Midnight in this adventure. But along the way, Cormac has to reconcile deeds from his past, from his youth, when he first went to the other side of Midnight and adventured, back when he was wild and impetuous, and sowing his wild oats and having a whale of a time in the spring of his years. And here he is in the winter of his years, attempting to still be the hero, because he may be the only person who can sort this mess out. And he discovers that actually, no, he wasn't really the only person who could sort this mess out, but he was the most convenient person to sort this mess out. And so the narrative has got these different layers to it that, as you go through it, you learn a bit more. And then with the art of the veil, that includes some extra lore, which puts together a few more pieces of the puzzle. And then there's a storybook with 3 different writers covering 3 different stories, giving you 3 different arcs on 3 different characters. And each one adds a little bit more of a dimension to the scenarios that you will play through. So then if you left that out and you didn't read that until after you've played it. You could then read those, you play it again with a completely new understanding of the connotations and the backstory of everything going on. That's probably how I'd recommend doing it. Then Denizens of Midnight is like the first expansion. That's and I should say it's the first one because I would recommend playing Cormac on the Other Side of Midnight, then play Denizens, then play Reaver. Denizens is a boss battler, but the way that it works is that it's every scenario is 2 tiers, and the first tier is a map laying mechanic, a tile laying mechanic, and by the time that you reach the end of the stack, and depending on how you've oriented them, can govern your effectiveness and the challenges you will face in a boss fight that is then triggered. And if you defeat the boss, you're quite likely to be able to loot some things, and you don't lose anything from not exploring Denizens, but you have a longer and more involved, more complex puzzle to solve, I suppose, if you do go through Denizens of Midnight. And that adds 4 scenarios that are like segues between the scenarios in Cormac on the Other Side of Midnight. And then it finishes with the boss fight against this Arisen, who's a Firbolg. Some of the elements of Charles Squire's interpretation of the early period are what I have extrapolated my races and things from, because they are the more fantastical. So you can see them used in a very similar way in something like Shlonya from 2000 AD.
I was going to say it sounded very similar to Shlonya.
I was completely unaware of it until like the second year of development, and I was talking with Paul Manley, who was like, "Oh, I've read this thing, and like it's sort of slightly reminiscent of this 2000 AD thing." And I'm like, "Oh, I've only read 2000 AD. I don't know Judge Dredd from it." And so eventually he's like, "Oh, have a look at this stuff." So the Fomorians in that, in terms of their interpretation, somewhat like nightmarish, hideous beasts, and they are very clearly inspirational behind sort of Games Workshop's Nurgle inventions and things, you know. My Fomorians are a little different from that, as a deep sea dwelling race, and former inhabitants of Innisfail, as were the Firbolg, and of course the Tuatha De Danann have come in there, and there have been some wars, and there's been lots of bloodletting, and not to give, obviously it does differ from myth, and go off on its own route, and I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but you follow Cormac's story through. He confronts this Arisen, who's rooted in the land of the dead, and has been drawing from a source of positive energy, enabling him to re-emerge on the other side of Midnight. And that energy has been given to him, and so you have to face down his allies and defeat him wherever they are. And they start out, but they're doing damage to trees, which are quite significant throughout the story. So it's a world tree, but there's not just one world tree. So the world trees are sort of growing at the center of the lines of ley, that sort of confluence points and energy centers. And so like if you think about when these kinds of sites became Christianized, they would often build churches, cathedrals at previous holy sites. So if you had a sacred grove, it would be like, sacred grove's gone, church there now. So this is a dominant facet of that history, and I wanted to have that in this game, where these particular sort of despoilers of the other side of Midnight are eroding the confluence points of the lines of ley and destroying the trees that hold this energy center together. And so, like the letter to Washington that was what was that? It was man does not weave the web of life, he's merely a strand upon it. It was like, well, so what happens when you're damaging the strands and you're making these big pockets that are like holes in that web, and wherever they're existing, the chaos can become infused and seep through, and then what will it do to you? Okay, how will it find a way to corrupt you? And so in it you meet a character who has been wholly corrupted by it and is aware of his corruption and wrestling with that. And your presence in the game is actually like a flipping point, not to go too not to give too many spoilers away for people that will eventually play the game, but hopefully to incentivize some people to maybe jump on our late pledge and come along and get involved. But when you have that moment, that's the character then you can play in Reaver, and you can take him from the point where he's on the edge, he's teetering on the edge. It's like he's looking into the abyss, but he hasn't quite fallen into it yet, and it hasn't quite seeped into him, and he's on that turning point. So he could go from sort of, he could fall through his sins into acts of damnation and become entirely damned, or perhaps he could go through acts of redemption and achieve atonement.
So it sounds like you can influence the narrative of the game.
Yes, and your decisions have consequences. Yes,
yeah. And that's actually quite challenging to kind of bake into the game system, because you kind of got to accommodate every player's decision.
Well, obviously you have a finite number of decisions that are presented. Yeah. So yeah, it's not as open-ended as a role-playing game in that aspect. Yeah. And I think that's the challenge that board games are always going to face and will stumble at, because that's the attraction of a role-playing game, right? It's that open-endedness, right?
Yeah, but still kind of creating a board game that allows for branching narratives. And also can maintain the game balance across them and the continuity. Must be a bit of a headache.
I don't know. I think that the balance is perhaps where the greatest challenge lies. Sometimes you have maybe a wild hair that you can't chase, because you realize that this is not adding anything to the game. Ultimately, you are creating a board game. You're not you're not writing a novel. You're attempting to create something that will craft an engaging story that can play out in a number of ways and hopefully have different meanings and different points to that story, right? So it's memorable in different ways based on the decisions that people make. But you can't obviously follow every wild hair that you might have, and one of the greatest areas is that discernment between what adds to the game, what makes it memorable, and which ones actually are just sort of like serving something that might be interesting to you that's not necessarily as interesting to other people. I probably fall down that route every now and then. I realize I've kind of stumbled into a back alley of this world that maybe could go somewhere else or be better served placed somewhere else in the game. But then I've got the advantage of having the Thinning Veil in the background, which used to be at the forefront. And obviously I'd created at the time when we first went to Kickstarter with that, we had like 33 scenarios were finished. Now it's got to be about 60, and I've finished the Nightmare mode, which was introduced during the second run. It's a huge amount of effort, right? So it's not just like the investment and the investment financially or the time, but the creativity that goes into that, and all the while that is happening, the company's not bringing in money because you didn't fund. And it's like, okay, so how are you going to survive? And it's like, well, he's going to keep on finding a way, and so you do. And eventually you end up in a situation with Cormac. Each time you're trying to learn, because you have to go, what can we do better next time? Where did we fail? What areas can we learn from? What did we learn about the platform we're on? So Kickstarter was quite an education for me. I'm not so much a technophobe as I thought, but I'm quite old school and learning, and had a lot to learn. So I had not used, even Creative Cloud programs. I've been starting to use those for myself. It's been just about a year that I've been doing that. And until then, I was paying people to do all of this sort of stuff. And eventually you go, well, okay, by necessity, I've got to learn that. Well, that's going to take me time. And I'm not going to be as good as the people that I've been paying to do it, because they've been doing it for years and it's their profession. But I have templates that exist, and I have many ideas, and I'm quite resourceful. So what can I get done? And so you have to meet those challenges. And sometimes they do seem insurmountable, and other times you think to yourself, well, I've got this. And And I think that's the voice you've got to listen to, because it's quite easy to get daunted. It's like anything else when you have that sort of fear is the mind killer. Well, mind is the fear killer, and so you have to remember that.
Is this currently available? It says on GameFound.
Yeah, it's on GameFound. So Cormac is, and when I was talking about the boss battle of Denizens, and I was talking about Reaver, the Reaver's Tale, those are part of the Cormac Mac Airt on the Other Side of Midnight project, which is now a 1 or 2 player game. Though I have to say there were groups of people that sat around and they were like, you should market this like they marketed Solomon Kane, because we've all sat around and made the decisions between us, passed the dice around, and we've all had a blast playing it. So you could market it like that. And I'm kind of like, yeah, marketing things that are sometimes it's just not so easy to do a high concept with something, right? So if you're going to pitch like, oh, this disaster movie's got like a high concept, so it's really easy to pitch. But when you've got something, the more that you've tried to tick a lot of boxes, and the more that you're going down a path that people might not necessarily be too familiar with, the less of those things are sort of truisms, and you have to find your own way. So it's like, yeah, I could market it like they marketed Solomon Kane, but I'm not really sure how they marketed Solomon Kane. So or even familiar particularly with that as a game system, having not played it, but certainly a fan of the stories, and I've read an awful lot of Howard's work, but I'm not familiar with the game. So it's kind of, okay, well, cool. Whoever it was that said that was extremely passionate about Solomon Kane. It was, I think, their favorite game, and they compared Cormac favorably with it, said it's very similar and it's really good in the same sort of way, and that's something I should have done. But I suppose that it's kind of like you have to wear a lot of hats too. So it leans into some of what Matt was saying earlier, was the sort of you have a group of people and you're all kind of like talking about the idea, but you realize that it's not just you've got to create a game, you have to learn all the different aspects of the business. And so having been in business for myself for the best part of 20 years, that experience has helped me, but it's by no means been all. It's an entirely new thing to learn with its own sort of foibles, and coming across to GameFound, where you're not learning from scratch, but you're learning over. There's certainly a lot more to learn on that platform, and I think the support's been amazing. So a little bit plug for GameFound there. It is awesome for creators. I don't know how it is for backers. I actually don't think I've ever backed anything on the platform.
I do. I back a lot of GameFound. There's been a few issues in the last couple of months, and I think it's more down to Brexit causing problems with deliveries and stuff. But it's like they're trying to work a way around people in the UK getting their pledges, and it messes up the pledge manager. So it's saying it's costing you less than it is, and then you can't progress. Like there's one recently that I've backed, and I can't get through the pledge manager because it's telling me I've been overcharged. I was like, well, I'll try and add some more stuff, and then it's like, well, it won't let me do that because it's not the exact amount, and so I'm going back and forth with them trying to figure that out, and that's happened a couple of times. Like the Eve tabled game that's coming out back. That same thing happened with that. So I couldn't get through the pledge manager because there was issues with the things like that, and it's just like, thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like that sounds like I've got another learning curve to get through then when that kind of stuff kicks in. But
there's lots
had I did my first cancellation of an order from a guy from Hong Kong the other day. I don't know if I should disclose that, but it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so it's kind of like and I'd not done that, so it's kind of like, I contacted GameFound first of all, and was kind of like, well, do you guys do this? Do we do this? And it's all little elements like that, and you're not really sure. And they're like, oh, you action it, and then we follow it through, and it's kind of like, oh, all right then. So guy was waiting for a little while for his refund, but that's done now, and so I sent him an email, and he was very happy. But yeah. Hopefully there won't be too many of those. There'll be loads of people coming in and getting their Cormac on.
Yeah. Well, good luck, because we've talked to a lot of people about crowdfunding, and as much as it's got there's a lot of good to it, there's a lot of stress that comes with it and stuff. So good luck. Good luck, because I'm sure there will be a massive learning curve that comes with it and stuff. But yeah, whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. So
Yeah, I've heard that. Whatever doesn't kill you maims you, right?
Just like, a scratch.
I had dark brown beard like when I started this gaming company. All right. But yeah.
I feel like we could talk to you for a very, very long time, and I feel like there's a lot of questions I want to talk to you about board games, types of board games.
Scratching the surface.
Yeah,
of so many
man. Like
subjects,
there's you talked about balance in games, which I think I could talk to you for about an hour and a half on its own, just sort of in general. But I get the impression I'm probably going to get a text message from Pete very soon, going, "Can we?" I was looking at my phone, waiting for the message from Pete. Can we cut it off soon? Because he's kids and such. But so before we go,
yes,
we usually do I think you're prime for this. We do it's kind of like 20 questions. So basically, you pick we will all think of a franchise. It can be like Lord of the Rings, it could be Game of Thrones, it could be Star Trek. You think of a character within that franchise, and then we have to ask questions to that person to try and figure out who that character is. So you need the only caveat I would say is, don't make it so easy that it's literally just straight away, but don't make it so obscure that nobody's going to get it. Now, you tell us the franchise beforehand, and we'll tell you if we know what it is. Like, my thing's probably Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Warhammer, Star Wars, things like that. Pete can go down a lot of other.
I'm looking
areas.
Around for inspiration.
Yeah. So we can do an example for you. Let me just get our stopwatch here. Pete, do you have one? You're generally pretty good.
I do, yes. Because you mentioned Judge Dredd, we're going to go for the world of Judge Dredd.
Ooh, do you know much about Judge Dredd, the world of Judge Dredd?
No.
I am sort of middling, so I'm not sure how good it would be.
I've read Judge Dredd, but not very much.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
Okay, so you're a Lord of the Rings person, yeah? I'm guessing you're pretty deep Lord of the Rings, so I can go Silmarillion on you, and you'll maybe understand if I pick a character and stuff from there. So
I might have a shout at it, but I don't know, man. That's
okay.
I've read Silmarillion like 2 or 3 times. Yeah. Okay,
you need to read it a couple of times to sort of get through all the different sort of things. So I'll do Lord of the Rings. It's one I think we've done. Actually, I don't know. Have I done it? Possibly.
I don't know. Who is it? We'll tell you.
Okay, so let me just get the stopwatch up here. Where are we? Right. Or do I do the? Okay, no, actually, I'll do that. I'll do this one. Because it's got a bit of a curveball to it. Okay, so we'll do this one. Right, so it's Lord of the Rings, or at least sort of Lord of the Rings. 60 seconds. Go.
Are they in the films?
No, this character is not in the films. But technically, you could argue yes, but he's not in the films.
Okay. Are they in all 3 of the trilogy books?
No.
Are they in the Fellowship of the Ring?
No.
Are they in Two Towers?
Nope.
So they must be in Return of the King?
Nope. They're not in any of the trilogies. They're in the Silmarillion.
They're
in the Silmarillion.
Does the name feature in a separate publication?
Yeah, well, they're in that now. The name is technically because I feel like it's going to give that away. Like it's really if you're a guy who knows it's going to give away. So I'm not going to give you that clue. But they're in the Silmarillion. They are mentioned in a couple of the Silmarillion itself, and maybe in like the Unfinished Tales. Trying to think, it's been a while since I've read them, but I think they're possibly in a couple of them. They're not a main character, but they're a big character.
Are they part of the Maya?
Ooh. Are they? I'm trying to think. They.
I don't know. I asked you, mate.
They're. Ooh. I want to say yes, actually, because I think they are.
Are they one of the twins?
They are not. All right, I'll give you because they are not good. They are not good.
Huh. Okay, but you think they're Maya? All right.
Possibly. Yeah, I'm trying to I think when I tell you it is, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. I'll just like.
How many guesses are we going to get at this?
Well, you've got 60 seconds, but because it's over now, you can.
Oh wow, we're well over.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a Maya. Is it Alatar? Is it Palando? And it's kind of like, it's neither of those. I don't even know who they are. Like, all right. During Wethel.
Yeah. Let me see. I just want to see. Just I'm sort of 75% sure that they.
This is such an obscure character, even Matt doesn't know.
They are. But they are. He is Maiar. He is Maiar.
Okay, but it's not with the good. Okay, is it Sauron?
No.
Or related to Sauron?
Sauron is a Maiar. He's a part of that clique.
Bob?
Is it Bob?
It's Bob. Okay.
I haven't got a clue, Matt. I'm sorry.
Okay, so he's a Balrog.
Paul, have you got any ideas?
He's
Gothmog.
Gothmog. Boom! There you go. Gothmog,
Okay.
Lord of the Balrogs, who are Maiars.
Alrighty.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I was like,
Dude,
are they?
What were you saying about being obscure?
That's not. Well, he's similarly Lord. He got the name.
A
So
side character in the
He's not a side character, really, is he? He's the Lord of the Balrogs, and he's got obviously Gothmog in the films is the name of the sort of kind of orc like captain, but he's not in the books. They just added him in. So I didn't want to kind of go. He's in the films, Gothmog, because you would have got it straight away. So, yeah.
Yeah, he's in the home series as well. So.
Yeah. Okay, so right, we've done me. Pete, have you got one for?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
What do you got?
Star Wars.
Okay, Star Wars. 60 seconds. Go. Original trilogy.
No.
Prequel trilogy.
No.
Sequel trilogy.
No.
Oh, Pete, no. Okay, are they
Expanded universe?
Yeah, extended universe.
Expanded universe.
Nope.
Oh, are they in live action series?
No.
Oh, fuck's sake. Are they in the animated series?
No.
Fuck's sake, man. Jesus Christ. We said not obscure.
It's not obscure, I promise.
Okay. Are they non-canon books?
No.
So they're not in the films. They're not in
They
the
are in the films. They are in the films.
Oh, are they in the anthologies? One of the anthologies?
Yes.
Okay. So are they in Solo?
No.
Are they in Rogue One?
Rogue One.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I expect an apology.
Okay. Thank you. Right. That's.
Is it the character played by Forrest Whitaker?
No.
Okay.
All right. So Rogue One, one of Matt's favorite Star Wars films, and possibly the best Star Wars film. Right. So it can't be Andor because he's in the series. So it can't be in that. So it can't be Andor. Is it human? Are they human?
Yes. Yes, they are human.
Are they Imperial?
No.
Are they
Force sensitive?
Well, that's debatable. We don't know.
Oh, what's the guy called? The blind guy. Oh, what's his name?
Yes, the blind.
Oh my God, what's his name? Oh,
Pete, did you just say yes? It's him.
It's horrendous. Wow, what's his name? Somebody in chat, tell me what's his name. Oh,
I don't know the name of the blind guy. The blind sort of, is he a force user or is it just belief? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's never explicitly stated whether it's force sensitive or not. It's implied.
I'm not googling it.
Yeah,
I'm not googling it.
I'm sorry, I don't know the guy's name, but
was it Shirut Imwe? Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Shirut Imwe. Maybe Donnie Yen. Yeah, what a character.
Brilliant actor. Brilliant role.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, okay, man, yeah, right, okay, very good, right, yeah. I apologize.
Thanks for the apology.
You have a full retraction from me on that one. Okay, very good. Yeah. All right, okay. Paul, have you got one for us?
Oh man. Have like sometimes when you just kind of I just about to pick one and I was like, actually, you guys will just get it straight away. Are you familiar with Preacher?
Yes.
Okay. Ish. Okay. So Preacher, right? Okay. Preacher, 60 Seconds, Go. Are they in the live action series on Amazon?
Yes.
Do they
with the Grail?
Sorry?
Are they with the Grail?
Yes.
Okay. Is it Star?
Yeah, it is.
15 seconds. 15 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
What a series, man. So good.
I went for obscure, right?
Amazing. Well, yeah, I feel like we could probably talk. We have not scratched the surface. I feel like you need to come back on just so we can talk board games in general and music and other stuff like that. Yeah. We can just carry on.
We could talk about Thinning Veil. We could talk about Crypt of the Charnel Court. We could talk about Red Mist. Yeah. Or we could talk about absolutely anything, like Aliens versus Predator Requiem, which we didn't.
We didn't. You started talking that before the podcast, and then it didn't sort of come in.
For sure, talk about something like that, right?
Yeah, but by all means, man.
I'd love to. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Brilliant.
Nice one. So if you've got anything to sort of pimp out now or people need to sort of then do that, please.
Oh, I guess that's it, really. We talked about the late pledge for Cormac on GameFound, and from there you can see from the company page that we've got like Thinning Veil up there as a pre-launch page. We've got like a preview of Red Mist, which is coming along in development right now, really, really well. Just before we sign off, I can show you a little tray of things that I've been. There you go. So there's a host of the characters from Red Mist.
Things, minis. It's a surefire way for me to back a game when they got pretty miniatures. I was looking at the miniatures that came with you. I was like, oh, they're pretty.
Yeah, these are all sculpted by Andrew Cozen. He's absolutely fantastic to work with. It really sort of shares the vision and the ideas that he's just kind of crystallizes on what I'm talking about really swiftly. So it means that we can work together very instinctively and naturally, and it's just kind of been a real blessing to have him as part of the team, and hopefully be with us for a good long time. And so those are his sculpts, and I've spent a little while painting those up, and there's going to be some heavy play testing happening, but nice. Hopefully if people are interested in that, it's actually a 1 to 10 player game.
Wow.
We can touch on that perhaps another time. If we get,
definitely.
If you have me back on as a guest.
Yeah, come back, man. Yeah. I'm all about the board game guys. Just come back whenever and just talk about people like, okay, so thanks very much, man. Really appreciate it. Amazing. Again, by all means, come back on. You're more than welcome. We can talk for many hours.
I feel that. Awesome. I feel like I've got to know. I think I'd need to get to know you guys better for sure. It would be great.
Yeah. Nice one. So for tonight, I've been Mac Airt. With me has been Peter Ray Allison.
Good night, everyone. And I'd just like to add that this Saturday I will be guest dungeon master for D&D in the castle at Ulverston Castle in Derbyshire.
Nice.
And I'll be running a 6-hour session of D&D based on Derbyshire folklore.
And if you're lucky, you might have some Geek Pride t-shirts that will be winging their way to Pete tomorrow. Hopefully, I've given you what was in the bag from UK Games Expo. Everything. Excellent. I just dumped it in a box for you. So there's a lot of stuff in there. So yeah, if you see Pete, but get some free t-shirts and stuff out of it. There you go. And finally, our special guest, Paul Rose.
Thank you for having me on, guys. It's been a real blessing and real privilege to be able to come on and speak with you.
Thanks a lot.
You.
Night, everybody.
Absolute pleasure.
Bye.